In 1994, it was discovered that planes purchased with charitable donations were operating diamond mining equipment rather than food. He paid $1.7 million to settle it amicably by 1999, and that was only the start. Robertson's business concealed more than anyone realized. From a $1.9 billion TV contract, financed by ministry funds, to covert investments with an African warlord. We're revealing the events that transpired behind the scenes today. Born on March 22, 1930, Marion Gordon Robertson was born in Lexington, Virginia, a town steeped in Civil War history and tucked away in the Blue Ridge Mountains. When Pat was a child, his father, Absalom Willis Robertson, was already making a name for himself in Washington politics. When Pat was 2 years old, his father was elected to the House of Representatives. He then went on to serve in the Senate for 20 years. Gladys Churchill Robertson, his mother, was descended from a very pious and historically significant family that included singers, preachers, and even a distant relationship with Winston Churchill via the first Duke of Marlborough. Through persons like John Woodson, who came to Jamestown in 1619, the Robertson family tree reached back a millennium to the colonial foundations of Virginia and English royalty. Pat's viewpoint was formed early on by the weight of his history. He had no intention of adopting the moniker Pat. His older brother, Willis Jr., continued with it. Said Pat, and touched his cheeks in a playful manner when he was still wearing diapers. He detested his given name, Marion, as he grew older. He experimented with using M since he thought it sounded weak. Gordon, but also dropped that because he thought it sounded phony. Ultimately, he embraced the moniker since it seemed organic, straightforward, and relatable. Millions of people would later know about it. The Robertson family led a modest life despite his father's immense political influence, managing tax legislation in Congress, and contributing to the creation of the payroll system that is still in use today. Despite all of that authority, his father didn't think that working in public service was a means of becoming wealthy. In both public and private life, the senator was renowned for being frugal and maintaining a neat appearance. That was a memorable example. Pat was raised in a household that valued humility, service, and discipline. Politics, however, can be cruel. His father served in the Senate for decades, before losing his seat in 1966 by a mere 611 votes out of 433. The unexpected loss contributed to the demise of Virginia's bird political apparatus. Pat's life was also intricately woven with religion. Both of his grandfathers served as Baptist clergymen. James Robertson, an Anglican priest, was one of the ancestors who came to Virginia in 1695. The family tree's branches were populated by more clerics on his mother's side. During World War II, his mother experienced a profound spiritual awakening and converted to Christianity. She then left Washington's elite circles and prayed in private that both of her sons would follow in her footsteps. Pat was sent to the McDonough School in Baltimore when he was 11 years old, the same year that Pearl Harbor was attacked. For a child who had been raised in luxury, the rigorous military-style school was shocking. It established the mood. He would enlist in the Marines and experience actual combat in Korea years later. However, he had already relocated to another rigorous prep school, the Malley School in Tennessee, in 1940. He got up at 5 in the morning, practiced with guns, and passed chili inspections at McKinley. Yet he still graduated with honors in 1946. He was 16. He enrolled at Lee and Washington universities in the same year. He became a member of Sigma Alpha Epsilon and studied history. He maintained a 3.82 GPA while pursuing romance at local women's colleges, while doing really well in class. In 4 years, he completed magna cum laude. His flawless marks in American history and constitutional law were observed by his professors. In 1949, he was chosen to join Phi Beta Kappa, an organization that recognizes exceptional academic achievement. His transcript revealed otherwise, despite his later joke that he spent more time chasing ladies than reading books. Excellent grades in almost all subjects. Nevertheless, his fraternity buddies recalled a streak that was rebellious. He disrupted parties, planned late-night road trips, and once went joy-riding in the university president's automobile, only to return it with a scribbled apology and an empty tank. He didn't wait to be called when the draft was reinstated in June 1948 because of Cold War concerns. He joined the Marine Corps Reserve at the age of 18. He returned to college later that year as a reservist after completing basic training at Quantico, where he placed 12th out of 247. The discipline he already possessed from Mali was strengthened by the military experience. His father's words on taxes, government authority, duty, and where to draw the line reverberated in his mind. Over dinner, Pat listened to his father's arguments against progressive tax increases and federal overreach, claiming that anything higher than 25% constituted theft by the government. He was promoted to first lieutenant in 1952 after graduating from college. He served with the 1st Marine Division in battle zones such as Heartbreak Ridge and the Punch Bowl during the Korean War. They were more than simply names. Life was measured in inches and minutes in these bleeding cold ditches. Even though he coordinated logistics and had an administrative role, he was still a member of the machine and close to the action. For his service, he received 3 combat stars. Paul McCloskey, another Marine who shipped out with Pat years later, said his father's influence helped Pat avoid frontline duty, even going so far as to propose that he set him up to work as a liquor officer, transporting booze from Japan. Pat refuted it. He sued McCloskey in 1986 for $35 million in libel damages while he was a presidential candidate. However, he discreetly abandoned the complaint, paid court costs, and never refiled when Super Tuesday approached in March 1988. Schedule conflicts were mentioned by his team. The case was dismissed with prejudice by the judge. Pat's life took a turn for the worst once he left the service. The resume was with him. A Golden Gloves boxer, a Navy officer, a Yale Law graduate in 1955, but after failing the New York bar, he accepted a career in electronics with friends from law school. He took a sip. He hung out in New York's bistro, seeking pleasure, and referred to himself as a swinger. In 1956, he led Adlai Stevenson's Staten Island campaign. Although he felt empty on the inside, everything no longer made sense. The business endeavors were unsuccessful. The hole was not filled by politics. He experienced a life-altering spiritual experience that same year while dining with a Dutch missionary. He converted to Christianity. Around 1954, he had already wed Adelia Day Elmer in secret. Yale is where they first met. He was a law student. She was a nursing student. Their families disapproved of them, so they eloped. He had Democratic ancestry and was a Southern Baptist. She was an Ohio Catholic Republican. They didn't notify their parents, didn't have a church wedding, and went forward with a civil ceremony. It would be a 68-year marriage. Pat Robertson enrolled in Yale Law School in 1952, probably because his influential father expected him to pursue a career in business or politics. He finished close to the top of his class and received excellent scores when he graduated in 1955. On paper, everything appeared to be flawless. With the exception of his one failed attempt at the New York bar exam, he never tried again. He acknowledged that he had never read the Constitution at a Yale event decades later. He had taken constitutional law for a whole year, but nobody had ever questioned him about it. His failure wasn't merely a misstep. His heart was never truly in law, it turned out. A year later, that became more apparent. He met Cornelius Vanderbrien, a Dutch missionary who had survived World War II and led a life of profound humility. Over dinner in Philadelphia in 1956, Pat was deeply affected by a verse from Proverbs that Vanderbrien cited that evening. Have complete faith in the Lord. Something changed. Pat Robertson, a businessman with a Yale degree who was expected to earn a big income at W.R. Grace, left everything behind. He abandoned his corporate education. He also shut down a promising electronics company that he and his law school friends had co-founded. His family was taken aback. It didn't make sense to them. For Pat, however, it marked the beginning of something more significant. He was attending seminary in New York by the end of 1956. For 3 years he immersed himself in theology, the Bible, and a circle of charismatic Christians who practiced speaking in tongues, an unusual phenomenon in Orthodox churches. He continued to be officially affiliated with the Southern Baptist denomination, which opposed those behaviors, even while he pursued this spiritual path. His pattern was also evident in his decision. Striking a balance between tradition and personal belief, his family continued to be concerned that he was squandering a top-notch education on something that appeared too nebulous, too sentimental, and too uncertain. With only $70 left over and no job stability, Robertson loaded his wife Dee and their 3 children into a car and drove to Tidewater, Virginia, in November 1959. He had no television at all. He was adamant on starting a Christian television network. Nevertheless, he managed to collect the funds to purchase a UHF station in Port South that had gone bankrupt. He submitted the paperwork to organize the Future Christian Broadcasting Network in January 1960. By October 1961, CBN was barely broadcast. The signal hardly made it to the block's conclusion. To check if it was working, he would send individuals to the corner pharmacy down the street. That was the shakiness of it all. Robertson attempted to serve as the pastor of a tiny church in Bedford, Virginia. Prior to all of that, he endured for 6 months. He was broken by the ideological disputes, the strain, and the harsh realities of ministerial life. Burned out, with no money and a growing family to support, he left. He sold kitchen utensils door to door when he was at his lowest. With degrees from Yale and seminary, this man was one of the most educated in America, and was pounding on doors to attempt to sell strangers pots and pans. Dee kept the family together during all of this. Their first kid, Tim, was born in 1954, conceived before they were married, a detail that would later surface in his 1988 campaign. Pat's conversion occurred in 1956, the same year that their daughter, Elizabeth, was born. Their youngest child was born in 1963, and their son, Gordon, arrived in 1958, while they were in seminary. Every child arrives in the midst of a spiritual or professional turning point. Each signified a moment in the narrative when things were still in their infancy. He bought the Yahweh-themed YH-TV station in 1960. When CBN started, it aired for just a few hours each evening. Commercials were rejected due to a lack of funding. CBN came close to going bankrupt once more in 1963. Monthly operating expenses came to $7,000. Pat Robertson urged 700 people to donate $10 a month in front of his modest Virginia Beach crowd in 1963. It was more than just money in that $7,000 plea. It was a matter of survival. His Christian broadcasting network was on the edge. However, something was triggered by that request. The 700 Club was established by 1966, and it wasn't simply surviving after 10 years. It was all over. Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan both appeared on the same show in 1977. Such political titles had never been used in a religious program. Robertson had discovered a recipe: combine celebrity conversions, dramatic tales, and leave exorcisms with faith healing. Despite the worries of psychologists, Christian audiences paid attention. By 1979, there were 16 million viewers, up from 10 million households in 1975. People were unable to turn away as Cold War dread and prophecy collided. The 700 Club started to change as the 1980s arrived. On film, Robertson was no longer by himself. He introduced Scottish singer and author Sheila Walsh in 1987. Additionally, the tone changed to a chat show in 1993 with former Miss America, Terry Mewen. Younger viewers took note. After 18 months, Walsh departed and subsequently talked about his issues with mental health. Mewen remained and became the co-host with the longest tenure. The program's scope grew to include Middle Eastern crises, the Berlin Wall in 1989, and Chernobyl in 1986. Robertson's spiritual cassette accompanied every significant news occurrence. The program was available in 37 million cable homes in the United States by 1990. He was criticized for turning news into prophecy, particularly when he asserted that Soviet ships were carrying out biblical prophecies. Robertson did more than simply respond to the news. He established a news network of his own. He established one of the first faith-based news outlets with overseas bureaus, CBN News, in 1974. CBN reporter George Thomas provided daily dispatches from Thran during the 1979 Iranian Revolution, occasionally outperforming the major networks. However, a lot of stories were presented through apocalyptic glasses, rather than objective reporting. By 1982, CBN News, which was fully donor-funded and employed 28 full-time reporters on 6 continents, was spending more than $8 million annually. They reported on Tiananmen Square, the Beirut bombings, and the Falklands War. Critics did see a trend, though. Content that contradicted the ministry's beliefs frequently didn't air, while stories about persecuted Christians received top priority. Robertson wrote The Secret Kingdom, his first best-selling book, in 1984. It became the best-selling religious book in America that year after selling over 650,000 copies. It was a straightforward message: get God's blessing by adhering to these 8 guidelines. His earnings by 1986 were $2.3 million in royalties, which were all used to fund the ministry's expansion, including the construction of a $25 million broadcast facility. Despite selling 500,000 copies, His 1991 book, The New World Order, sparked criticism. It discussed global elites, Freemasons, and the Illuminati. It echoed traditional anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, the Anti-Defamation League said. Nevertheless, by 2000 Robertson had authored 23 books and received over $15 million in royalties, all of which went into his theological empire. Then, in 1987, problems arose. Robertson founded the charity Operation Blessing in 1978, and 2 former CBN employees accused him of abusing it. They claimed that funds intended for humanitarian assistance had been diverted to a diamond mining project in Zimbabwe. Documents from 1994 revealed that aircraft meant to transport supplies and meals were actually transporting mining equipment. After investigating, the Attorney General of Virginia decided not to press charges. Nevertheless, Robertson made reparations in 1999, totaling $1.7 million. In 1988, this incident surfaced during his presidential campaign. His $2 was emphasized by his opponents, a 27-room house with a salary of $4 million. By 1990, donations had recovered from a mere 8% decline in 1988. His supporters remained faithful. Robertson started airing the 700 Club to 92 countries in 1990. According to reports, it was attracting 200 million viewers every week by 1993. Despite the high cost of $47 million, donations continued to come in. The prophecies didn't, however. He said in 1980 that by 1982 nuclear war would break out. It didn't. He predicted in 1976 that the 1980 election would be won by a socialist. In 2004, Ronald Reagan did. Although it was true that George W. Bush would win by a landslide, he also said that it would bring about the end of the world, which never materialized. According to polls, 34% of his regular viewers questioned his predictions by 2006. However, 61% of people continued to believe in his general principles. There was a storm for Operation Blessing. It began with excellent intentions. The foundation provided assistance to more than 200,000 individuals during the 1985 Ethiopian famine. Pilots, however, claimed that in 1994, rather than delivering help to Zaire, the same charity's plane had brought mining equipment. In reality, only 1 airplane out of 40 brought food or medication. The others were transporting Diamond Ventures equipment for Robertson. It was supported by an investigation in 1999. Supporters believed they were saving lives when they gave money in planes. They were financing a mining company instead. To oppose the ACLU, Robertson founded the American Center for Law and Justice in 1989. Its public face was Jay Sekulow. The ACLJ began with a mere $100,000 and has since grown into a legal behemoth worth $50 million. It supported conservative causes and prevailed in several Supreme Court judgments. It wasn't clean, though. The group gave Sekulow and his family more than $60 million between 2000 and 2017. They opposed vaccine mandates during COVID. They defended January 6 participation in 2021. The IRS started to inquire after critics claimed they conflate politics with ministry. Robertson transformed his television division into International Family Entertainment, a cable network. In 1990, it included family-friendly programs and reruns. It was present in 63 million residences by 1995. Robertson then sold it to Rupert Murdoch in 1997 for $1.9 billion. Not the $1.8 billion stat is commonly believed. He could have taken home up to $350 million. The twist was that money from the government had been used to build the channel. Critics deemed it a betrayal when Murdoch rebranded it as Fox Family, and subsequently ABC Family, with content that was far from religious. God intended him to succeed, Robertson stated. Only $37 million of his personal funds had been put in it. The situation in Liberia was worse. During a civil conflict that had already claimed 200,000 lives, Robertson and Liberia's president, Charles Taylor, invested $8 million in a gold and diamond mining venture in 1999. In exchange, Taylor was hailed as a nice man by Robertson on the 700 Club. It was too late when Liberia was sanctioned by the UN for trafficking blood diamonds in 2001. Robertson had lobbied President Bush to defend Taylor, according to a congressional investigation. According to documents, his business extracted $15 million worth of gems and gold. When Taylor ran away in 2003 following a war crimes indictment, the business fell apart. With just 77 students, Robertson founded Regent University back home in 1977. 10,000 people were enrolled by 2005. Although science courses taught creationism and opposed evolution, the law school earned ABA accreditation in 1996 and produced 150 graduates who went on to serve in the George W. Bush administration. Critics attacked the curriculum in 2006. America was supposed to be a Christian country, according to the government school. By 2010, however, contributors had thrown in $100 million, yet only 61% of graduates were finding employment in the legal field. The Christian Broadcasting Network expanded to 200 nations by the year 2000. They broadcast in 71 languages. The network had a $25 million tech center and 900 employees. However, things did not go as planned. Robertson established Virginia's Faith Mountain Water Park in 1987. It was intended to serve as a Christian substitute for theme parks. The names of the slides were taken from the Bible. Faith agreements had to be signed by employees. There were only 150. After only 2 seasons, the park closed in 1988 after losing $12 million. He was sued by locals who said he had deceived them about financial gains. Robertson walked away in silence. He didn't bring up the park again. In October 1987, an unforeseen event occurred. Millions of people know Pat Robertson as a televangelist, but he left his ministry to run for president. It wasn't a marketing stunt or a joke. He meant it. Through his broadcast, he had already captured the interest of millions of evangelicals. And he utilized that reach to register more than 3 million voters via something dubbed Operation Blessing. The political world was taken aback when the Iowa caucuses were announced on February 8, 1988. Robertson did not simply appear. With 25% of the vote, he defeated Vice President George H.W. Bush, while Bush received 19%, placing him in third place. It was more than simply a headline. The shot was a warning. The religious right was organized and had made its way into politics. Neither party machines nor billionaires drove Robertson's campaign. It was driven by 700 club viewers, regular believers who contributed modest sums, accumulating almost $26 million in war funds. It became evident for the first time that a television preacher could convert followers into voters and funds into momentum. However, the campaign that took off like a rocket didn't last very long. His rules weren't nuanced. He demanded that abortion be outlawed completely. He called for prayer to be taught in schools. His base was excited by these concepts, while moderates were turned off. The stranger stuff followed. He said that God addressed him directly regarding policy. He dismissed Catholics, Muslims, and non-religious people. When he said on broadcast that only Christians and Jews were qualified to rule America, he also claimed at one time that God had revealed to him the sites of secret missiles in Cuba. Senator Bob Dole didn't laugh, but others did. He asserted, "You don't need divine signals to understand foreign policy." The combination of politics and prophecy was novel and unsettling. Then, literally, the storm hit. Robertson said he prayed Hurricane Gloria away from the Virginia Beach headquarters of his network in 1985. He maintained that his prayers were answered, despite the fact that the storm nevertheless inflicted $900 million in damage elsewhere. When Tom Brokaw of NBC uncovered this during the campaign, it quickly gained widespread attention. His previous claims of miracles and supernatural healing were being probed by journalists. The video that Brokaw showed on October 12, 1987, gave Robertson a more religious showman-like appearance than that of a future president. It was a field day for comedians. Voters began to turn away when late-night hosts made fun of his weather abilities. Super Tuesday, March 8, 1988, was a horrible day. His moment was supposed to come now. His stronghold was the South. However, he lost nearly everywhere. Bush received 49% in South Carolina, while he received only 19%. He didn't even reach 15% in Virginia, where he is from. The campaign was over. Without taking home a primary victory, he left that February. He wasn't finished, though. He started the Christian Coalition in 1989, a year later. Now organized into a permanent political force under Ralph Reed's leadership, it was the same army of believers from his campaign. In order to grade politicians according to Christian principles, they began publishing tens of millions of voter guides for churches. For the first time in 40 years, such guides contributed to the Republican takeover of Congress by 1994. Despite losing the race, Robertson had permanently altered the battlefield. His gaffes continued throughout the campaign. America should be prepared to use tactical nukes on the Soviet Union, he once stated. His own military service was also criticized. Pete McCloskey, a former congressman, accused Robertson of fabricating his Korean War record, claiming that his father, a U.S. senator, arranged for him to avoid fighting. In order to avoid testifying under oath, Robertson filed a lawsuit but then dropped it. He carried the doubt with him. His direct manner remained unsoftened even after several decades. He advocated on the U.S. to kill Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez in 2005. The outcry was swift. Even evangelicals distanced themselves, and Robertson later apologized after saying, "Take him out," on live television, which sounded more like a mafia command than political analysis. The numbers didn't lie. White evangelical Christians voted for Bush in 1988, with 81% of the vote, and Robertson had given Republicans a roadmap to power. Win the church, win the vote. However, scandals never stopped pursuing him. After he left the race, he endorsed George H.W. Bush, but Bush kept him at a distance. 2 days after 9/11, Robertson agreed to go on air with Jerry Falwell. When he blamed the attacks on liberals, gays, and feminists, the White House denounced the remarks, and Robertson later claimed he didn't hear Falwell's entire statement, despite transcripts showing he said, "I totally concur." The timing couldn't have been worse when an earthquake shook Haiti in 2010, killing hundreds of thousands of people. And Robertson claimed Haitians had made a pact with the devil in 1791 and had been cursed ever since. While delivering aid on the ground with his own charity, Operation Blessing, he was accused of racism and cruelty. In 1991, he wrote a book full of conspiracy theories about the Illuminati, global bankers, and secret societies. He name-dropped the Rothschilds, reinforcing anti-Semitic stereotypes, and asserted that world leaders were unwittingly carrying out the devil's will. Robertson denied anti-Semitism, but stuck to the theories after the Anti-Defamation League demanded clarification. Then came the Chavez moment, when he suggested on air that killing the Venezuelan leader would be less expensive than going to war. When backlash hit, he said that taking him out would be equivalent to kidnapping, but video proved otherwise, and even his Christian peers chastised him. He blamed hurricanes on America's acceptance of homosexuality, warned Orlando during Disney's Gay Days that disasters could follow, and even his charity was embroiled in scandal. His religious views were not helpful either. He called Islam and Hinduism demonic, pointing at a statue of Kali and calling it ugly and fierce. He also claimed that radical Muslims were motivated by satanic power after 9/11. According to documents and flight logs, Robertson himself flew on one of the planes used to transport diamond mining equipment for his private company in Rwanda in the 1990s, using planes purchased for humanitarian aid. Later, Liberian warlord Charles Taylor claimed Robertson obtained gold mining deals in Liberia in exchange for lobbying assistance in Washington. Investigations ensued, but no charges were brought. He passed over control of CBN to his son in December 2007, but he continued to host the 700 Club until 2021, precisely 60 years after it was originally broadcast. He was 91 years old when he stepped off the stage. Tragic events also befell his last years. His wife Dee, who had been with him through everything from eloping against family wishes to campaigning alongside him, died in April 2022 after 68 years of marriage. They had 4 children, 14 grandchildren, and 24 great-grandchildren. A year prior, he published his final memoir, which was full of stories of miracles, but made little mention of his more contentious moments. As this was going on, Regent University, which he founded in 1977, continued to expand, training over 11,000 students, primarily online, under conservative Christian principles. He passed away on June 8, 2023, at the age of 93. While some people mourned, others did not, and NPR brought attention to his history of racist and anti-gay statements. While the rest of the nation debated his legacy, his estate, reportedly worth over $100 million, continued to fund CBN and Operation Blessing, but disagreements erupted over what he truly stood for, and social media erupted with reminders of his most extreme statements. Over 2,000 people attended his private memorial at Regent University. He said in 2006 that Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon's stroke was divine punishment for dividing God's land, and Israel severed ties and canceled a huge tourism deal with him. Robertson later claimed he only said it out of love, but that was his pattern. Did he bring Christian values into politics, or did he poison them with division and extremism? Make a startling statement and then retract it.